If you are not in a position where you feel like you should conceive a child, if conceiving a child would be disastrous for you, you believe, then do not participate in activities that literally billions of times in the past have resulted in the conception of a child. If reproduction, maybe I'll phrase it this way, because I really want to make it very simple for these people. They have difficulty understanding complex concepts. So we're going to dumb it down as much as possible. If reproduction would be a disaster for you, you believe, then do not participate in the Reproductive Act.
All right, so that is Matt Walsh, host of the Daily Wire, in a recent episode of his podcast. And hey, these ideologues who love freedom now want you to not have sex unless you want a child. Matt Walsh says we need to be abstinent, all right? So can you picture just like being intimate with the partner and just saying, you know what, Matt Walsh said that we shouldn't, so can't do this. Yeah, alternatively, we could say, as a queer woman, whenever I have sex with another woman, that's never a concern. So maybe Matt Walsh's solution is everyone do gay sex. I think we should, tweet that out, that's what Matt Walsh wants us to do. And he just like won't stop calling it the Reproductive Act. He will not call it sex. He will not be a normal human being. He keeps saying the Reproductive Act. Let's roll a clip of him saying that again.
If you're able to reproduce, and yet reproduction would be a catastrophe, then do not participate in the Reproductive Act.
The Reproductive Act. Imagine your friends like telling a story and they're like, and then, we did the Reproductive Act. I'd be like, ew, stop it, you weirdo. This is so weird. The Reproductive Act, like the Ohio State University, really throws the in there. I don't like it. I think it's creepy. Yeah, what do you think about the Reproductive Act? No Reproductive Act.
I think a lot of people might agree with you that it's a bit creepy. I'm not sure that he's actually worried about that. So that's Matt Walsh. When they cranked out Ben Shapiro, then they did a couple of clones of it, and each of them has gone in a different direction. Some have tried to make their name by spending a lot of time with Ted Cruz. That's a weird way to go in terms of popularity. He decided to make a couple of changes to get the success that he saw Ben Shapiro having. One, he decided to cover up as much of his face as possible. I think that was a good call. And the other was that he decided his shtick was going to be open fascism. So Ben Shapiro will imply that you should listen to him and you should believe what he says because he's the intellectual, he's the logical guy. He can make an argument. Matt Walsh doesn't pretend to be able to produce logical arguments. And in fact, if you look, he calls himself a fascist on Twitter. He believes that power is the only thing that should matter. So when he is saying, if you don't want to have a child, you will be forced by government law effectively to be abstinent, he's not making an intellectual case. He's not making a legal philosophical case. He's not even really there making a religious case. What he's saying is, we made it happen. We can force you to do what we want. He believes that Christians are better than non-Christians. Men are better than women. White people are better than non-white people. Straight people are better than anyone else. Cis people better than trans. And that is the way it's going to be based on the power of government and the threat of being locked up. Look, I think it's honestly pretty cutting edge. I think other Republican pundits will get there at some point. This idea that we have the power, not the numbers. People don't agree with them. Most people find him as repugnant as me and Jessica do. But it's gonna be the way we want because we believe in supremacy and we've got the majority. Structurally, the system is so rigged that people with as abhorrent and unpopular positions as we have can still maintain supremacy in the Supreme Court, if nowhere else. And that's it. He doesn't try to hide it. And to some extent, while I find him to be a disgusting human being, I do respect the honesty to some extent, at least.
Yeah, the fascism, you're right. It's so blatant here. Because think about who has the money and resources, who is set up well in their lives to reproduce, to take on another life and provide for it. It is people who have privilege in our society. He's essentially saying the people who should reproduce are the people who have privilege in our society. And he says everyone else should resist their compulsions because we're human beings and not beasts. Let's watch that clip.
Because if you are able to reproduce, no matter what else you do, you can make it this quote unquote safest kind of sex you want. There's always still gonna be a chance that you reproduce. And if that chance would be like plunging off of a cliff level of catastrophe in your life, then don't participate in the act. Control yourself. Right? We're human beings. We should be able to exercise some self-control. Right? We're not beasts in the jungle that are unable to control our compulsions. At least we shouldn't be. One of the defining features of human beings, one of the things that's supposed to set us apart from beasts, is that we are able to have a compulsion to do something, we want to do something, and yet we choose not to do it.
Interesting theories from Matt Walsh. Human beings are the best because we don't bone unless we want to make babies. No shagging unless you want children. That's what makes human beings great. Thank you, Matt Walsh, so much for that contribution. Listen, I think what he's doing here is just setting the tone, right? There are members of the far right who plant the seeds, then they're watered and sown by all of the other members of right-wing media. And listen, they harvest those crops when the time comes. And what he's planting the seeds for is the eventual overturning of Griswold v. Connecticut. And we already had Clarence Thomas in the majority opinion hint that this is exactly what they plan to do. This is the Supreme Court case that guaranteed our right to contraceptives, because he's not saying if you don't want to have a baby, if you don't want to have an abortion, use condoms, use birth control. He's saying abstain from sex, because they're absolutely trying to next outlaw contraceptives. Clarence Thomas directly said in future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. He's asking for these cases to be brought before the court. So the way the court usually should go is there are some cases where people believe their rights have been violated, and the court picks a few cases out of hundreds that they get every single year. Now he's asking specifically, can we get some cases so we can overturn these precedents? Really great functioning democracy we have here.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Also, I guess, all of the people who are raped should have exercised more impulse control. That 10-year-old in Ohio, she really should have controlled her impulses. So it's perfectly acceptable for them to not be able to have abortions. A Texas woman who had to carry a dead fetus for 2 weeks should have exercised more impulse control. How about you exercise some impulse control? The impulse to, when you are living a life where you are so small, so broken as a man that you feel you have to tightly control everything that a woman does, how about you exercise some control over that impulse?